Hi there, and welcome to Operation Carpe Diem. I'm your host, Caitlin, and here we help business owners seize their opportunity for success. Ready to start seizing your day? Let's dive right in. So this week we are continuing our series, What Fuels You Up? And this is part 2, and we're talking about capacity today. First of all, if you have not listened to last week's episode, that's episode 2, What Fuels You Up, part 1, definitely pause this episode real quick, listen to it, and come right back. That way you're all caught up. This series wasn't supposed to be a series. It was supposed to be one episode, and I just went way more in depth than I originally intended, which I don't think is a bad thing. I'm all about good content and not cutting anything short or shortening anything that should be a little bit more in depth. But definitely listen to it real quick and come back here so you're all caught up and ready to dive into this new concept, part 2. And today we're talking about seating capacity, right? So if you have listened to episode 1, then you might remember that I made a list of things that I know about cars, right? This whole series was prompted and inspired by Devin and I driving to a wedding, and we saw this red Tesla in the lane next to us. And that got me to thinking about fuel types and how we as people have different fuel types, which is what we talked about last week. But number 2 on that list was about seating capacity. Cars have different seating capacities, right? Some cars can hold 2 people. Some cars can hold 4 or 5 people. I think that's pretty standard. Some cars, like minivans, I think can hold 7. And then Devin's family has a 15-passenger van, which is huge compared to like my little Kia Forte. So today we are talking about that seating capacity and how it relates to us as business owners, us as people, and how we can think about the capacity of ourselves as parents, as spouses, as friends, and as business owners, and how we can use that to make the most out of our time and the most out of the hours that we have with the people that we love. So let's dive right in. I want you to think for a second. And if you're anything like me, this has probably happened to you a number of times. You're on social media, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, whatever it might be, and you're just scrolling, just your average afternoon scroll, and you see somebody in like the same field as you. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's like your competition, although I hate using the word competition. So for me, as a wedding photographer, if I see another wedding photographer absolutely killing it, sometimes the thought of comparison runs across my mind. Has that ever happened to you? Like you see somebody absolutely killing the game on social media and you have a moment of just jealousy. Like, why can't I get that many bookings? Like, my business doesn't look like that. You might see them like have double the amount of clients that you do, or you're thinking, how do you have that much time in the day to do what they just posted on their story? Like a lot of times I'll see business owners post like what all they like got done in a day, and I'm like, how did you get that much done? That's impressive. And for a second I feel guilty about how many boxes were checked off of my to-do list that day. Maybe somebody just delivered a gallery and they're talking about how they delivered X number of images, and I'm like, wow, how did you take that many images at a wedding day? That's not the size of mine, and I feel like I deliver a ton of images. Or maybe you're impressed and just baffled by the number of reviews that they have coming in. You might think, oh, I have an amazing client experience. Why aren't more of my couples, why aren't more of my clients giving me reviews about this amazing, wonderful client experience that I'm giving them? No matter what the scenario is, no matter what specific thought has crossed your mind, I'm sure that this concept of comparison has probably crossed your mind at some point or another, right? And whenever we talk about comparison, maybe sometimes we don't act in jealousy. Maybe we don't think, man, like that's so impressive. Why isn't that happening to my business? Maybe we think the exact opposite. Maybe we see somebody post about that gallery and think, wow, you only gave them that many images? What did you even do all day? Or you only have that many clients? I mean, your work is good, but like you should be booking more. I mean, that's a very negative way to think, but it happens. We, as human beings, are constantly comparing ourselves to others, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. And as much as I hate to admit it, right? We're always comparing. I know whenever I am trying to make a decision, and especially whenever I'm trying to make a decision with Devin, whether it's something big or it's something as small as picking which meal we want for dinner. We have every plate, like the meal kit subscription, and they'll come with these meals that we have for the week. And if we don't know what we're in the mood for, we'll lay out all of the recipe cards, all of them, and we will hold up 2 at a time and pick which one sounds better between this one or this one. And then after we pick that, it's that one that just won versus the next thing in the recipe card list. And then it keeps going until we have it narrowed down to one, right? We're constantly comparing. We're constantly comparing, like, which TV is better? Which one do I want to make a purchase on? Which business do I want to support and give my money? Which friend should I call in order to, like, schedule a game night or go out to dinner? Which restaurant do I want to eat at? Which brand of laundry detergent should I get? We're constantly comparing. Since we as humans are constantly comparing things, whether it's ourselves to others, whether it's brand versus brand, or meal versus meal, we're constantly comparing, right? So I want to make it very clear that this episode is not intended for us to stop comparing. I hear it all the time, and I think it's so much easier said than done to look at somebody who is struggling with this concept of comparison and just say, well, you shouldn't care what other people think. Just stop comparing yourself to others. I'm sure you've probably heard that a time or two yourself, right? Just don't compare. Why should you care what they think? And that's so much easier said than done because we as humans are constantly comparing. So what this episode is intended for is whenever we feel these signs of comparison, whenever we feel the urge to compare ourselves to others and beat ourselves up over it, to take a step back and think about our seating capacities. Whenever I see that post on Instagram that makes me stop scrolling and think, wow, I saw your checklist and I got twice that done today. Why aren't you accomplishing more? Or vice versa, etc. I always try to take a step back and think about my seating capacity versus their seating capacity. Whenever I look at somebody's business and say, like, wow, your work is so good. How do you only have this number of weddings? Or how do you only take this many portrait clients, or whatever the case might be? I have to take a step back and think about my seating capacity as a business owner versus their seating capacity. It's 100% true that we do not know everything that is going on with somebody's life. I don't care how close you are, you do not know everything that's going on with somebody, right? So whenever I see these posts and think, how are you not doing more? I don't know what kind of season of life they're in. I don't know what's going on in their relationships. Maybe they have a family member who is sick, or they just experienced a loss. Devin and I, we hear this all the time. You do so much work. Our own wedding photographer, the first time that we met her, one of the first things that she said to us was, wow, you guys work a lot. And we do. Devin and I, we are young. We are 23, 24-year-old. And we don't have a lot of other things going on. We don't have kids. We don't have pets. We work together. So we travel a lot and we work a lot because we don't have the responsibility of somebody who is in their 30s, or somebody who has a family, or somebody who has a significant other that works another job, right? Devin and I are lucky because whenever we travel 5 hours to a wedding, we just get to talk in the car the whole time. It's like the equivalent, or a rough equivalent, of somebody coming home from work and like sitting on the couch together and like watching a TV episode, which we do that too. We do that after work as well. we're a normal couple still. But we spend a lot of time together, which means we have more capacity for work because it's not taking away as much time as it would to work 2 separate jobs. Have you ever heard the saying that you have just as many hours in your day as Beyoncé does? Now, I don't think anybody is going to sit here and tell me that Beyoncé isn't fantastic, but that's not what this episode is about. I wanted to think, just as Beyoncé has 24 hours in her day, you have 24 hours in yours, and I have 24 hours in mine. But what we do in those 24 hours is what sets us apart as people and as business owners. It's about the capacity of our day. If we all start with a standard 4 to 5 seat car, the same 24 hours, how we fill that up is different from person to person. Each capacity is different. So whenever we think about this standard 4 to 5 seat car, we have ourselves in the driver's seat. And if we learned anything last week, it's that taking care of ourselves is also important, right? We have maybe our spouse or significant other in the passenger seat with us. In the back seat, we might have our kids and or pets. We have a seat taken up with our friends and our hobbies, and then that leaves like 1 seat for your work. But whenever you look at my car, I have myself in the driver's seat, right? I have Devin in the passenger seat. I don't have kids. I don't have pets. I have friends and hobbies that I like to do, so that's 1 seat, and now I'm left with 2 seats that I can fill with work. My seating capacity is immediately different than someone else who has a larger family than me. And these things in our lives, these things that we choose to fill up our lives, they change over time. So in like 5 years or so, whenever Devin and I do have kids, then our seating capacity is going to look a little bit different. Right now, Devin and I photograph 50 to 60 weddings a year, plus portraits, plus this podcast and this whole second brand. That's a lot of work that not many people would even consider taking on, especially with families. And whenever Devin and I start a family, we're not going to have the capacity or the same capacity to take on 50 to 60 weddings a year because our kids are going to take up some of that capacity, as they should, right? We're going to dwindle that down to probably a more normal wedding season of like 15 to 20 weddings. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. We're not in that season, so we don't know exactly what our capacity will look like. So it's not fair to compare my seating capacity to your seating capacity or to someone else's seating capacity, just the way that it's not fair to compare yourself to me. It's not fair to me, it's not fair to you, it's not fair to your brain, who is probably stressing way more than it should on these little comparisons. I want you to think about a clown car for a second. You know the image of a little tiny car and like a bunch of clowns are just spilling out of it. Whenever you try to compare yourself to others, I think that you are trying to pack a clown car. Whenever I look at somebody else's business, whether it's in a positive, very awestruck way of how did you do that, or in a very negative way, like you should be doing more, then I am mentally packing a clown car. If I am looking at somebody's business and saying, oh my goodness, they have kids, they did twice the work that I did today, probably just during nap time. Like, that's insane. Why am I not doing more in my business? I am taking the capacity of somebody else's business. I am taking somebody's 15-passenger van and I'm trying to fit it all into my little 4-5-seater Kia Forte. And it does not fit the way it should, right? Whenever I look at somebody's business and think, well, I started my business in college and I was doing all of this stuff. Why aren't you doing the same thing as me? I am taking my Kia Forte and trying to stuff it into their 2-seat convertible. And whenever we try to pack that clown car and things aren't fitting the way that they should, things get left out. Whenever you try to fit 15 people into a 5-seat car, people are going to be uncomfortable. People aren't going to fit. Some people may be hanging out the window, metaphorically. And that's whenever things in our business, things in our life, start to literally go out the window. Whenever we try to fit our 15 people into our 5-seat car, if people are sitting really uncomfy, they're trying to squeeze 5 people into that 3-person back seat, then that's the equivalent of things only getting half done in our business. Like, we're checking things off of our to-do list, but they're not done as well as they could be, right? They're not done to the same level of expertise, the same level of quality that we're used to. Whenever people just flat out don't fit, that's the equivalent of things falling off of our to-do list. Whenever we try to fit the equivalent of that 15-passenger van into our little Kia Forte, all of the things aren't going to get done because you may not have the capacity for it. You don't have the same capacity as me. You don't have the same capacity as your neighbor, as your friend, as your spouse, as your, dare I say, competition. Whenever we take a look at that saying, we have the same 24 hours in a day as Beyoncé, we're not taking into consideration any of her seating capacity, right? Beyoncé has 24 hours in her day, but she also has assistants. She has a driver. She probably has a chef. She has a lot of people helping her to be whatever she needs to be to do whatever she needs to do. So whenever you look at somebody's business and you think, how did they do 3 galleries today, plus all of these emails, plus they did like this album, plus they did 3 blog posts, whatever their to-do list looks like, you're not taking into consideration that maybe whenever they said that they edited 3 galleries, that they got 3 galleries back from their editor. They took a look at it, approved it, and just sent it off to the client. That's not the same amount of time that you spend maybe editing every single one of your images by hand in Lightroom. Things look different to different people. Your business does not operate the same way as my business or as somebody else's business. Your life does not operate the same as mine or somebody else's. So the next time that you find yourself in this loop, in this cycle of comparison, the next time that you stop your scroll on Instagram and think to yourself, how am I not more like them? Or why are they not more like me? Stop for just a second and just think about their capacity. Think about how much help they must have in order to get there. Think about how much longer their to-do list is than yours. Think about how you don't know what's going on in their life. Comparison, to me, is inevitable. It's just something that we're going to do as humans. And this idea of thinking about somebody's capacity shouldn't take away from their accomplishments, but really just serve as a check on all of us. To stop trying to fit somebody else's car into our own. Stop trying to fit somebody else's capacity into our own. If we have a full plate, a full glass of water, and we try to fit some water from somebody else's glass, it's just going to run over. If we try to fit more people into our already packed car, people are going to be hanging out of the window, right? So the next time that you have that human urge to compare yourself to others, just think about what they might be going through, what they might have to overcome, and how that looks different than your life. Next week, we are going to be diving into part 3, the final part of this series, What Fuels You Up, and that is what I've coined Shine Factor. So make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast and follow me on Instagram. That way you can tune in next week for another amazing episode. I can't wait to see you there. Thank you for listening to Operation Carpe Diem. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow along on Instagram at Caitlin Wilcox Photography. That's CAITLIN Wilcox Photography. Until next time, let's go seize the day.